So last time we talked, we went over so much of your first book, The GI Diary.
Right.
I'd love to talk about your book that you wrote in '74 about Pride and Love, the poems and...
Oh, yeah.
Where did that kind of come from? How did you get into that?
That was developed from Knopf Books at Random House, I believe. They came to me and approached me to do the work on that book. Nan Talese was the editor. So she, Gay Talese's wife.
Yeah. Because this is just after Superfly, a couple years, obviously Shaft, but it's really the height. It's before We Lose Your Brother in '79, so this is kind of the height of the Parks family, really.
Well, it was, I worked on it during, actually, we were shooting Shaft's big score.
Yeah.
And I did the photographs, a lot of the photographs, as we were shooting the film, Shaft score. I was taking photographs for the book. So kind of worked out because the photographs worked out in conjunction with the film. So.
Yeah. As far as, because you, right after that was Aaron and Angela, if I'm not mistaken.
You know, it might have been during Aaron. I mean, we were doing a lot of films. I can't tell you, between 1970, 69, wherever, and 75, 76, we were shooting a lot of film. I was working on a lot of film. And so, yeah, Aaron Loves Angela was in there, too.
That's a pretty great film for you and your brother, because that's Jose Feliciano.
He did the music, yes.
And then I think that's Irene's.
Kevin Hooks.
Yeah, and his dad.
Yeah, his father was in there, and
Moses was in the film.
Moses was in the film. Irene Karras.
I think that's Irene's debut on film.
I think it was, yeah.
That's so crazy.
She was more theatrical.
Yeah.
And she did a very good job. I remember the beginning of that film. I was up at the old man's house, apartment, and my brother comes in and he says, I got to go catch a plane to L.A. to talk to the producers at Columbia. And the old man says, what for? And he says, I got this script that they want me to do. So he says, is it any good? He says, I don't know, I haven't read it. But I'm gonna go anyway. So he said, David, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm just hanging out with the old man, having a little wine and dine. And so he says, go to the airport with me, I want you to read the script. I said, okay. So I went to I got in the car, and we took off for the airport. He handed me the script, and I don't think I got further into it than maybe 5 or 10 pages. And I handed it back to him, and I said, this ain't gonna work. He said, what are you talking about? I said, man, this is a bad idea. He says, well, don't say anything, just, I got my money involved in this. I said, you're one of the investors? He says, yeah, I got a piece of the action. So I didn't say nothing, you know, I just, it was bad. The script was good, but the idea, it was not timely. You have a Puerto Rican girl with a black dude. That don't work. That's the first thing that hit me. I said, man, this ain't gonna work. And it eventually did not work the way it should have. But that's the sign of the times, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they were trying to break barriers, but that's a hard barrier.
Yeah, in the mid-'70s, yeah.
That's a hard barrier. So anyway, he went to L.A., cut the deal, came back, got the crew, Superfly crew together, and we started working for Columbia. So, and that's, I guess, that was after I had worked on, I was working on a lot of film. We did Lead Belly in Austin.
Yeah.
So I had just gotten back from Austin before we started on that. So as I said, I mean, we were shooting film then. I mean, you sort of get hung up into a flow where all you do is what you're supposed to do and don't even think about it.
Yeah. It's gosh, your brother was filming. Was it when he went to Africa when we lost him? Was that for the film Revenge that was never completed?
I think so. We had very little information on it, and it was a deal out of L.A. And so they were, and I saw Gordon again in New York, Junior, and I said, he didn't really talk much about it. He just says, well, we're going to go and shoot it. And I said, well, you're taking the crew, you know, Kurt Baker, who's his right-hand man, and I'm Kurt Baker's left-hand man. And he says, no, I'm just taking Jimmy with him. Jimmy was a production assistant, and he took Jimmy with him, but he left the rest of the crew. I said, man, I don't know if that's a good idea to go to Africa without your crew, because, you know, you're not covered. You know, we covered him, covered Gordon Sr., you know, I mean, once you get a crew together, you know, it's hard to break that bond of trust.
Yeah.
And when you're shooting film, you need to have the trust of your crew. And if you have to pick up a crew like that in Africa, I mean, it ain't like going to Cleveland, Ohio, I mean, or someplace, Chicago. This is Africa. And it turned out to be a bad deal. We don't know the specifics of it. All we know is the plane crashed. Jimmy was supposed to be on the plane with him, but he was late. He had been out partying, so he missed the plane. I said, that's the best miss you ever had. He said, you got that right. And apparently, the producer, it was the producer's plane. It was his private plane. They were overloaded. They were trying to get to an area where they were having a conflict, where they were going to film from the air and if they could, get on the ground and shoot a war going on between tribes.
A real war.
A real war. They do crazy things. And they were going to try to get on the ground to do that. But the plane on takeoff crashed. So that's where he lost his life. And it turned out to be later, when they did the investigation, they found out that someone had sabotaged the plane and put, I believe, like sugar into the gas tank, and never got the combustion up in order to get off the ground. So wow, that's what happened there.
How hard did this hit you and your dad? I mean, this must have been tragic. He was 44.
I guess so, yeah. I was 34.
Yeah.
He's 10 years older than me, so. Well, yeah, man, I mean, yeah, it was devastating. You know, it's not like somebody dying from cancer or something where you know the possibilities of someone passing. You know, you get prepared for that.
Yeah.
But when something like that happens, yeah, it was pretty devastating, especially to the old man. And, you know, you get to the point where, well, I wish I would have said this and said that, but it's too late then, you know. Yeah, it's basically how it happened, yeah.
You mentioned earlier Lead Belly, and I know you're in Austin now. Well, you were down in Austin then. What was that experience like? Because this would have been mid-'70s as well.
I think it was 75, 76, 75, because we did Aaron in 76. It was one of the best films I ever worked on. I mean, Austin was great. They sent me as an advance man to set up pre-production, find locations, and deal with the local people for logistics and all that. I never forget, the film was originally supposed to be shot in Louisiana.
Wow.
And I think it was Baton Rouge, where we were originally supposed to shoot it. But Texas sent this gorgeous woman up to meet Dad. And I mean, she was 6 foot, blonde, beautiful, you know. And she comes into the apartment, and I'm sitting there and saying, "Oh my God, what the goddess of liberty." And she sits down. We have some wine and some lunch, small lunch, and then whatever. So, well, Mr. Parks, we understand you're going to shoot the film in Louisiana. I said, yes, that's what they were working on. Well, you just might want to think about shooting it in Texas. We have everything you need, and we can give you a good deal, incentives and all that. Yes, okay. So after spending the afternoon with her and getting to know her, the old man finally came around. He says, I'll tell you what. I'm going to send my son down, David. I'm going to send him down to Texas to meet with you all. And you give him the tour. And if he comes back alive, we'll consider it.
He makes it back from Texas.
If you make it back alive, you know, didn't have the greatest reputation. At that time, it wasn't prolific in film. So I ended up going down there, and I must have spent in pre-production about, 3/4 of a year.
Wow.
Yeah, they sent me around, and I got to meet all the people that were going to coordinate the production. Everything from food to locations, see what facilities they had and all that. So we ended up shooting it in Austin.
I didn't realize you were down there that long, though.
Well, you know, you're going into an area that needed to be explored. I mean, you know, Texas wasn't famous for
Didn't have anything
big production. I mean, they're dropping $30 million down there. And at that time, what was it, 75, somewhere in there, $30 million is a lot of money. So they wanted to make sure that they had everything necessary, from hotels, because half the crew was black, which, you know, was a concern. And they wanted to make sure everything was cool.
Safe.
And I did my homework, and I got treated. I had a great time, man. Had a ball. I go back to New York on the first trip, and I said, yeah, we want to go down there. And the barbecue is good, too. The barbecue is fantastic. But it was really, of all the films I've worked on film since 1962. Was the first film I worked on, was called Walk on the Wild Side, a director, a prolific director from L.A. Was directing it. Jane Fonda was in it. Capuchin, Harvey Lawrence Harvey. I think it was Lawrence, yeah. And Ed Dmytryk was the director.
Oh, okay.
And so I ended up going there because I was in school my last year in secondary school, high school. I was going to a private school, and
You were like 17, 18.
Yeah, maybe 60. I don't know. I don't keep track of those things. And I ended up getting booted out of the school for 2 weeks. Yeah, I screwed up. I got caught in my room on Sunday morning with a bottle of wine, and I was listening to Miles Davis, and I was supposed to be in church. It was a Methodist church. So they ended up letting me go for 2 weeks suspension. And I show up in New York, and the old man says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, I had a little problem at school, and I got to kill 2 weeks." He says, "Well, what am I going to do with you now?" You know? I said, "Well, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm shooting an assignment on this film being made in L.A. with Jane Fonda and for Life magazine." He was doing special photography, which I had done a lot too, and my brother did it. You know, it's when you shoot on a film and do publicity and get it into magazines and newspapers and whatever. So he says, "Well, I guess I got to take you." I said, "Hey, I'm ready to go." So yeah, we get on the plane. Because at that time he was divorced and there was nobody at the house to keep it from being overrun with parties. And so they found a seat for me in coach, and he comes back and he hands me a script. And I think the script was Shaft, I'm not sure.
Wow.
So I read the script on the way to L.A. I think it was. Man, there's so many movies. I really can't keep track. And you're asking me questions that nobody ever asked me anyway. Just basically. And long story short, I end up on the set with him, and I'm standing around. I'm carrying his cameras and stuff, you know. And the director says, "Well, who are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm son of Gordon Parks, who's shooting." "Oh, Gordon, yeah, okay, cool." So he says, "Well, you just can't stand around on a movie set. You got to be doing something." So I said, "Okay, what do you want me to do?" So I ended up, long story short, being a gopher. And I learned a lot, you know. I got the instinct, and I saw the man work. And the one thing he taught me was it wasn't that difficult. And when you shoot a film with a crew, you trust your crew. And because I said to him, I said, "You know, you're not telling you're not telling people what to do." He says, "Why tell them what to do if you hire them to know what to do?" I said, "Oh, ding dong," you know. So he was a good mentor for me to follow.
Yeah.
And my father did the same thing, and very little direction, because you do your rehearsals with the actors. Everybody else is pretty much tuned into what they do, so you really don't have to tell anybody. You see a lot of films where the director's going crazy and doing all, that's a bunch of bullshit. You know, I mean, if you have a good crew, you let them do their thing. So I do a lot of lecturing to students, and I try to integrate those experiences.
I'm curious, with the Gordon Parks Award that's given at Tallgrass now,
Right.
When you get to watch these films, your knowledge is so vast. I'm curious, what are you looking for? What are you trying to see? What did you see in After Sherman that made that the winner this year?
Well, the relevancy of the project. I think the idea and the presentation of the idea is the important thing, you know. And there's guys doing films about his ex-wife having a horror show and having a heart attack because he saw her in a dream. You know, that doesn't grab me at all. So I really look at the content of, even before I look at the movie, the relevancy of what they're doing. And that to me is important. And I'm not into fiction. I do historical documentaries a lot, and history. I'm not into making it up. I'm into documenting the past as well as showing the comparison and the relevancy of the present, you know. So you have to have an idea of where you're coming from, because you might end up repeating what has happened, you know. So that to me is very important.
One of the documentaries you've done
Right.
is very timely in the sense that with the passing of the Queen, Prince Charles became King Charles.
Oh, you know about that.
And you did a doc about Prince Charles coming to Texas
Right.
in '86 for the 150th anniversary of the state.
Sesquicentennial.
Please tell me about that experience.
Well, it was pretty interesting. God, you saw that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
To find it was interesting, but yeah.
How did you find it?
It's online,
Google?
it's snippets, yeah. It's not a full, complete doc, but yeah.
But they show that.
It's clips. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it was. It was quite a day. I had to capture that whole thing in one day, and I was hired by the Texas Capitol Committee to shoot it. And it was put together pretty quickly. They came after me. I had to put a crew together and find out what the hell I was doing and what was going on. But that was a very interesting day. It was one day,
Yeah.
you know, and then dealing with the British security and you can't look at them, you can't touch them, you know. Can I listen? You know, you can listen, but don't talk to them. I mean, that whole godly thing about princes and kings and queens, it really is off the chart. You know, they're serious though, you know. But now you see him walking in crowds and shaking it. That's a big difference about what was going on then. I mean, we couldn't get more than 25 feet close to him, you know. But then again, you're in Texas, so you never know what's going to happen. You know, it's pretty loose down there when it comes to all that. But I enjoy doing it.
It's cool. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, you know, I talked to him. I even shook his hand, you know. I don't care, man. You know, if that's the way I feel, that's what I do.
So I've got to ask, we talked a little bit about barbecue. Last time we talked about barbecue too, but I didn't find out, what is your favorite type of barbecue meat? Is it brisket? Is it sausage? Is it pork? What is it?
All of it. I have a favorite place. It's called, it's in Lockhart, Texas.
The home of barbecue.
The home of barbecue. Crisis.
Yes.
And oh man, you know, That's what I do barbecue now. I mean, there are barbecue restaurants in Austin, and there's another place called Cooper's, which is on your way to Midland. I'd go to Midland a lot, West Texas, So I always, when I'm coming out there, the guys out in Midland, they pick up a whole ton of that stuff, bring it, We'll be partying. But crisis is, well, the Germans were the first group of people to really start to settle Texas.
Like Fredericksburg, that whole area.
All that area.
Yeah.
Lockhart, New Braunfels. That was the first area that they settled, and then they moved west, north and south. But the German influence in Texas is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But when you go to Crisis, man, I mean, they have this huge area where they have all the wood that gives it the flavor and all that. And they started smoking it. And like the Mexicans, they grill it. They don't smoke it like the Germans do. And they got, the Mexicans barbecue is good too. Matter of fact, barbecue barbacoa was started in a place called Laredo, Texas. But I love brisket, cabrito, baby goat.
Yeah.
Whew, that's really good. And you get the German sausage, all that stuff, and it's the wood. And I mean, they don't. What they do with the wood is they stack it outside, and they give it a year to 2 years to procure, and ferment before they put it on the grill or put it in the stove.
Gives it that
the
taste.
It's gorgeous, man. You go down to Lockhart, for example, and you see people that big, man. I mean, they're addicted to it. They go crazy over it. I make the trip about once a month,
Well, David, you got me hungry, so I don't have any more questions for you today.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the interview. Hope I was able to give you some insight. So what's interesting is that you didn't ask me, well, what's it like to be the son of Gordon Parks?
Well, we chatted so much last time. I didn't
know
want to
if you could. I understood you had a sound problem with that footage.
Well, we got the first part, so I mean, I would love to. I mean, the only part that we didn't get on camera was when we talked about your dad being such a good athlete and the tennis playing and how
he was a skier.
I mean, it elongated his life because he was so in good shape.
Well, that's the important thing I talk to students about is that, if you just home in on film, you get burned out. You have to have another area of passion to counteract the intensity that film requires, or writing, or painting, and so he embedded in the family, my brother and I, and an interest in sports. So I've done a lot of sports. I was, I don't want to brag or anything, but I learned soccer in France, so I was a pretty good soccer player. So the school I went to, the boarding school, one of the four that I was able to get through, I ended up being a soccer star, and because I could dribble the ball, and I knew, and then I went into. I tried my hand at basketball until I got to college. And then when you see 6'8", 6'9" people coming down on you, this is not for me. But I did do I was on a downhill skiing team at Ricker College, which was the first college I went to before I went to Nam. And I did the downhill and the giant slalom, and I was ranked around on the downhill. I was ranked about 80th in this country. On the giant slalom, I was ranked about 40th.
Wow.
So I was a pretty good skier, racer. And then when I got back from Vietnam and started to get back into tennis, I was ranked in tennis too. I don't remember the last ranking I had, but I played guys like, believe it or not, Rod Laver and Ken Rosewall and John Newcomb. I was in that era, just before Arthur Ashe. But I did play a number of sets with Arthur. Jimmy Connors and I used to be tennis buddies. We used to go around hustling. Because I spent a lot of time in LA when I was a kid, so I was on the junior tennis circuit, USLTA. And Jimmy and I used to do round robins, which is you get with a group of people and you play for money. And of course, they weren't supposed to know that. And so when I played with Jimmy would say, okay, I want you to get into the alley, where the two lines for the doubles is, and stay there and let me take care of the rest. Boy, we made a lot of money. we be playing a lot of money, a lot of tennis. So, yeah, I played with those guys, and I've had a number of times. Pancho Gonzalez, which was probably one of the best tennis players, along with Rod Laver, and at that time, Pancho, nobody could beat Pancho. And he was from Mexico. He was fabulous. And I played with his son, Spencer Gonzalez, and Dino Martin Jr. Dino and I used to play tournaments, round robins. Little Dino was good, And so that was mostly in Hollywood, Beverly Hills, round robin circuit. We go to various tennis courts and be playing for some serious money. Just stay in the alley. He'd be okay. No, we did okay. And now I'm into golf.
Yeah.
And man, that's the most difficult game you ever played in your life.
So now you're in Austin. What courses are you at?
Oh man, I play all the courses. I mean, I have some favorites.
Okay.
Yeah, but I play Austin. The whole place is a golf course. There's golf courses downtown, around the town, out at the lake, Travis. I play all the courts depending on who I'm playing with.
What's your favorite course?
Well, I actually lived right across the street from a place called Lions, which is the oldest golf course in Austin. I lived right across the street from it, and it's called Lions. It was the first course west of the Mississippi to allow blacks to play on. So it's kind of historical. And I got to the point where I could start to, I used to give private lessons, and I got pretty good at golf, but I could teach better than I can play. I guess it's the gab. But I started teaching, private lessons and stuff. I actually taught tennis at a place in Austin, Caswell Tennis Club. And when I got down there, after a while, I just got tired. I got burned out on photography, on filmmaking, and I took 4 years off and lived next to a tennis facility and started teaching. Took 4 years off, ended up being about 15 years. I just took a vacation, man. I was tired, of working. Not that I didn't want to work, and there wasn't that much work going on in Austin. So I had a chance. What I did was I was teaching tennis, playing tennis, and I've written about 6 scripts. I got into writing scripts, ideas, taking ideas and developing them into scripts. So I've got a stockpile of scripts,
So there's a whole bunch of future David Parks material out there.
Well, when I pass, they'll probably fund them. Yeah, I got some good ideas. One of them is smuggling, drug smuggling across the border. Mexico, been to Mexico, did my research. That was fun. And I've got some stuff on West Texas. I've got some stuff. I got a script. On Oklahoma. Wrote a script on Cotton Gray.
Wow, okay.
You ever hear it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did a script. His niece hired me to write a script on his life. Cotton Gray, whew, he's cool, man. So I did the research on that. I worked on that, and his niece ended up getting on drugs, and so the money never came through on it. I still got the script.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, between Lead Belly and Cotton, I mean,
yeah, man, I was doing a lot of writing.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't much filming going on, and I was shooting documentaries on West Texas cattle business and cattle barons. So I went and lived in Midland for 3 years, and I did the Goodnight Loving Trail history, which was fascinating. Started out at the border at Presidio and worked my way to Paladero Canyon and went into Colorado and on up into, followed the trail.
Wow.
And the ranches are still there. The old cattle baron ranches are still in the family. They have the research. I mean, they don't give it to this capital in Texas, to be buried. They keep that research in their ranches. So I got the real hardcore information on it. I really spent about 3-4 years shooting that project, and I've been on some of the oldest cattle ranches in West Texas, and unbelievable. And the people are cool, man. I mean, the West Texas people are real cool. Either yup or no.
Yeah.
And they don't mess around, You got to hold your liquor. And there's, not that many people out there. There are not that many people out there, so when anybody comes out there, they really are friendly. Really. Not like Austin. Austin's kind of Houston is Houston, and Dallas is Dallas. But I would say the most important city in Texas would be San Antonio. Whew. That's where the cream of history exists, with the families, the traditions, the Alamo.
Yeah.
Alamo City. Spent about 3 years down there researching buffalo soldiers.
Yeah.
Researching.
That was with your dad too, right?
No,
it was pre. Okay.
Yeah. I've got a script on the buffalo soldiers, which I'm working on getting. I have a producer trying to pull it together. And as I said, I've got about 6 or 7 scripts that I've been working on. But I would say the Goodnight Loving Trail is basically, you saw Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I mean, Lonesome Dove was McMurtry's creme de la creme.
Yeah.
And well done. I mean, that's what it was all about. If there's a film about the cattle business, that's the film you want to look at. Then don't forget Rawhide. Don't forget Rawhide. Clint Eastwood and the boys. They did a fabulous job.
Yeah.
And I watch Gunsmoke all the time. My favorite Gunsmoke still, Miss Kitty and Matt and the boy, because they were good stories and they were good characters and the stories were true. They weren't made up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Western Kansas. And I never realized it when I was a kid, when I was watching it, how relevant they were. Now I do.
Yeah.
I look at the stories and the characters and the culture, and man, they're right on. I mean, you can see other stuff on Westerns and, Roy Rogers and all that. It's kind of made up. They make, some of it's basically true, but it's commercial and they, so that's,
Are you a cowboy boot wearer?
Oh, yeah, I do when I have to. When I ride horses, we did a lot of horse riding. My brother had a horse ranch out in Topanga Canyon when he was living out there, and we had horses in White Plains when I was a kid. So I grew up, I ride. But I'm really basically a Manhattan cowboy. And I don't know if you ever lived there or been there.
I've been to Manhattan. I'm not a cowboy, though.
But have you lived there for a while?
No.
Well, it can get to you. So you have to find an escape. And one of the biggest escapes when I was living there were cowboy movies. You want to get some open space, some air, the whole thing. You want to escape out of that jungle. And some peace of mind and, But, you can walk around New York in the old days and find a cowboy movie now and then. And just on a gray day and it's raining, and I just go in there. Because there are movie theaters all over the place. Little ones, big ones, And you could hide for about 3-4 hours, escape the jungle. Have you spent much time there?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I like New York. I haven't lived there, though. I mean,
yeah. Well, if you live there, you have to.
Yeah.
If you don't, it's not a place where you. Well, I like this place. I think No, you want to make some money. You want to get some education. You want to learn about the meaning of life. That's the place. I've been to a lot of countries. One of the most fascinating things is I've been to a lot of countries. I've been around the world, except for communistic countries, about 3 to 4 times. And I've flown into France.
Didn't y'all live in Switzerland?
No, France.
But you went to Switzerland.
Yeah, I had a girlfriend there. I lived there.
Yeah.
I did, And I like that. And then Italy, Rome. But there is one place when you fly in, you get a chance to see the overall picture. And one thing about New York is you fly into New York and you say, wow, how did they do that? It's awesome, you just have to scratch your head and say, how the hell did they do this? Every time I come in, I'm just fascinated with it. It's amazing. How did they do it? And how are they continuing to do it?
Yeah. Well, David, I've really enjoyed our conversations.
Well, thank you very much.
I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Thank you. You asked some very good questions, and I appreciate it.